Hi, Chana. How are you? I thought that I would tell you a story, and I hope it's not too long, okay? Alright, so this story comes from a Rebbe of mine, and he heard the story when he was in school, just about your age. Does your teacher ever tell you stories? Okay, anyways, for this story, you need to know two things, okay? Just two. There's a river, it's named Ob. Can you say Ob? Good. And then there's a town named Che. Say Che. We're Jews, so we can say that, right? All right. So this is the Ob River. This is where you can find it in the world. Notice how it's at the top of Russia. And look at how pretty it is. Isn't that a good view? Anyways, the town of Che is up in that mountain region over there, around where the Ob River crosses. Okay, now we're oriented. Let's continue with the story. So it wasn't so long ago, around the time of the Holocaust in Europe. And there was another Holocaust that was going on in the other part of the world, in the eastern part of the world. The old Russian regime, which is known as Stalin's regime, it was a communist regime filled with goons and people who forbade Jewish education. They tried to stop anyone who was teaching Torah, but there were a few brave Hasidim that stopped at nothing to make sure that all the Yidden knew Torah and were acting properly in ways that exemplified an Am Segula. But one chassid was so proud, and he would go everywhere, even when people said, "No, you don't know, the communist goons, they're gonna come, they're gonna get you." And he went and he snuck into people's basements, and the wives and the mothers, they would open their homes and they would give him a little cake, and he would teach the Torah to the kids, even for 10 minutes. And he would tell them stories about Avram Avinu. He would tell them stories about David HaMelech. And he would try to make them feel special that they're Jews. Anyways, one day, sadly, he got caught. And he was quickly taken. He barely got to say goodbye to his wife and kids. They gave him a trial. They found him guilty of conspiring against the government. And then they sentenced him to jail and exile for 10 years. Oy. So for 8 of those years, he went to jail. It was near Moscow, not so far. I thought I wouldn't make it look too scary. See where Moscow is with the heart? So that was about where the jail was. But Moscow was no city with a heart. And every day, the guards would make fun of him. They'd make fun of the Jew. And they'd make him do super, super hard work in the fields. Work that didn't help anybody. All it was digging ditches or holes somewhere or piling bricks. It wasn't even to build anything. It wasn't to do anything productive for the country or the government. It was just to break the spirit of the Jew. But do you think his spirit was broken? Anyway, the chassid prevailed, and he continued to daven to Hashem and think of his family and kept kosher. After 8 years, it wasn't time for him to go, right? How long was his sentence? 10 years. Oh my gosh. He had to go for 2 years of exile. And that exile is in that place that I said you had to remember. Do you remember the geographical names? What was the first one? The river named Ob. That's right. And the town named Che. Okay. Anyways, they told me you were smart. So we get the chassid, and he gets shipped all the way to Che, which lies right on the Ob River. There, the soldiers dropped the prisoners off. They gave them a little money to help them find a place to sleep, and a portion of bread, which is kosher, and a portion of soup, which is not so kosher. Every single day, this is what they got. A little bit of money, a little bit of bread, and a little bit of soup. So, the whole town, you should know, operates off of the reindeer. They use the reindeer for everything. You know what a reindeer looks like? Okay, if not, ask your sister. Anyway, so they use the reindeer for absolutely everything. They take its skin and they use it for clothes, and they use it for shelter. They make their tents out of the skin, and they eat the meat. I know, it's crazy. They eat the meat, and then they use the bones. They use the bones as forks or knives. And the craziest part of all of this, they don't even know what fire is. They never saw it. It wasn't a part of their life. So yes, that means they ate the meat raw. I know. I'll let you digest that for a minute. Ha ha ha. So, the chassid, he tries to save his money at first. He finds an abandoned cave, and he gets inside, but it is so cold. And he tries to rough it and tough it out, but he can't do it. Now, after 2 days, he realizes that he's going to have to go find a person's tent to rent, at least a little portion of it. So, he finds a family, and they put up a curtain. Yep, it's made out of reindeer skin. And he gets this little small area. It's really like about the size of just letting you sit up in the tent. I mean, you can't even stretch yourself out completely. So he gets this little area right behind a reindeer curtain. And it's just enough for him to sit and do whatever little things that he wants to do. So he tries to live a simple life. After all, what else does he have? And he slowly, like, makes an influence, makes way with the people. And they don't know how to talk to him at first, but they realize that he's a holy man. So he learned to take the bread that was given to him, and he used it to fish. You know, he puts it on like a string, and he used it to fish, and there was a water stream that went like underneath the tent. And boom, he would catch a fish. Remember, they don't eat fish. They only eat reindeer. So anyways, so he used the bread, he gets his fish, so he survives only off of bread and fish. Now remember, those people of Chat, they only survived off reindeer. So slowly the people learn more and more about him. And they begin to learn how to communicate. Anyhow, Pesach's approaching. This is in the first year of exile. And the chassid found an abandoned government building to sit in for Pesach. The chassid's wife was expected to send him matzot for the Chag. But a week before Pesach, the package hadn't arrived. So the chassid told the people that he wouldn't leave the building no matter what until he could get that package. He needs his matzos. Otherwise, he wasn't going to eat anything all of Pesach for 8 days. The people began to get so worried. Oh my gosh, they didn't want to deal with a death of starvation. It's the worst kind of death to experience in the city. They began to get really, really worried, and they were fearful. They were so afraid for the holy man. Anyways, Erev Pesach, the box arrived, and the chassid had his seder with matzos from his wife. So, the next year, his last year of exile, something very interesting happened. Pesach was coming, and the people started to get afraid again. They knew that he wasn't going to eat anything unless he got his matzos. So, a month before Pesach, no box came. And then 2 weeks before, still, no box had arrived. But it made sense at the time because there was a problem. See, everything that comes and goes to the city has to go along this Ob River. And either the Ob River is flowing, in that case ships can go, or the Ob River is icy. And you could have a reindeer pull you across the ice. But this time, it was icy, slushy, like thin ice. It was very, very scary to travel on. It was too icy still for a boat to go through. It would cut the boat. But it was too soft for anyone to really ride across it. Or at least so they thought. And then, just then, an announcement came from the government. It said that the head chief of the town was coming. I should tell you that the announcement came months before. But they couldn't go execute it until 2 weeks before, because you're not going to go pick up this head general that was in the announcement 3 months before. You're going to go pick him up right before he's supposed to come. You're not going to have him sit around your no-fire town and village, for months. So anyhow, this head general needs to be picked up, and nobody in the town wants to go get him. And they're all like, are you crazy? I'm not traveling on that. And the chief of the town tries to ask everybody, can you please go? Can you please go? Nobody wants to go. So they drew lots. And a man's name came up. Now remember, if one small crack in the ice or anything, whoever's traveling on it to go get this guy, to go get the general, is going to fall in and he's going to die. So this man had to be very brave. He knew that if he didn't go get the general, the communist goons would probably come after them. And they could do really, really nasty things to the town. Anyhow, once they knew that he was leaving, everyone in the town wanted him to take something to the post office for them. See, nobody could go to the post office because they couldn't travel along the river. Everyone was too scared. Even the post office wasn't going to travel. Those people. So they all said, bring this for me, or bring something back from the post office for me. And he said, are you crazy? I'm not going to let anything weigh this down anymore. No one gets anything except for me. My one package is all that's coming along for this ride. And off he went. He went very carefully. And what that means, by the way, is that he went super fast. The reindeer were pulling him, zip, zip, zoom, zoom. The faster he went, the less chance he had for a crack to develop and possibly fall in the freezing ice water. So he went from town to town, and one after the next, throughout, he was always seen as the bravest guy they've ever seen. Nobody traveled on ice like that before. Eventually, he gets to the town where the general is. And it's in the same building as the local post office. There's a man that comes out of the post office and says, hey, you, where are you from? So he says, Che. The guy goes, no way, get out of here. Sir, come see this. And he brings him to the back. And in the back, he pulls out a package with the most amount of stamps and writings and signatures all over it. He says, I've never seen a package like this. It's super, super important. You have to take it to your town. The package was those boxes of matzah. See, what happened was these communists were so cruel to that one Jew who was in Chet. They really wanted to make him suffer. They knew that he'd eat nothing all of Pesach, and they knew that his wife was sending matzos for him 4 months, 5 months in advance, and they decided to play a trick on him. They decided to reroute the box to each city in the country. And every time it exited the city, it got another stamp. So it looked like the most important package. They timed it just right that it was at this city, and it was supposed to make it to his town, to Che, the day after Pesach. They wanted him to get the box of matzah the day after, just to crush his spirit. Anyways, the messenger sees this and really has no choice. This is the most important package the postmaster has ever seen. Anyway, the general and the box of matzah make it all the way back to Che. Crazy, I know. In the same really wishy-washy, icy, slushy river. So it gets there. And a new prisoner arrived. And he was a Jew. He came with a group of prisoners. So immediately, he looked dirty. He looked angry. He was filled with tattoos. Immediately, the chassid tries to befriend him. The guy wants nothing of it. The chassid tries to invite him for Pesach Seder to have with him, eat the matzahs with him. The Jew refuses. The chassid begins to cry. So the people wonder, why is this holy man crying? He told them that it was super important, that the package, it would be worthless if this Jew didn't eat the matzah. So they said, tell us what to do, my holy man. So he said, make sure that he doesn't eat anything on Pesach except for matzah. So in the middle of the night, the people crept into the Jew's tent and they put a knife to his throat. Of course, it was made out of reindeer bone. And they wake him up out of his sleep, and they whispered, "If you eat anything other than matzah with the holy man, we will kill you on the spot. And then we're going to drink your blood." With that fear laid in him, this tattooed-looking Jew kept all 8 days of Pesach. A short while later, the exile was up, and the chassid was permitted to return home to his wife and child, who was 4 years old when he left. So now, his son, who was 4 years old, is now 14 years old. He missed his bar mitzvah. Anyways, the family sees him and they hug him. They embrace him so tightly. They missed him so much. And they wanted to hear all about his stories from jail to exile. He shared with them one all-encompassing message that night of his return. He said, "The first Pesach I was in jail, I got mommy's matzah, but the guard wouldn't let me have the box. I begged him. I bribed him. I threatened him. I cried and cried and cried. The box was 20 feet away from me the whole time. I cried, but never was I able to fulfill the mitzvah. My last Pesach I was in exile, there was a Jew who was able to eat matzah on Pesach. The circumstances were strange, and he explained them, but the Jew ate it. All the crying that first Pesach never gave God what he needed to make the world shalom, to make it whole. Myself and the Jew on the last Pesach," he said, "of exile, were able to fulfill the will of the Ribono Shel Olam. And truthfully," the chassid continues, "it wasn't even in my merit that I got the package over there. It wasn't supposed to arrive. It was probably the merit of this Jew. He was given a matana from the Ribono Shel Olam to be able to eat matzah on Pesach, and it was in his merit that I was able to fulfill the mitzvah too." We never know why we get things sometimes, and it's not always because of our merit, but very often from the most unlikely source. So my teacher heard this story in class, just like you probably hear stories in class, only this time, his teacher was the 14-year-old boy in the story, relaying the message of his father to the class for us all to hear. Good night, and I know that Hashem is always watching over you.